The Capitol Hill, a significant shift appears to be underway within the Senate Democratic caucus regarding its long-standing support for Israel. This was most evident in a recent vote forced by Senator Bernie Sanders to block a $675 million arms sale to the Jewish state. While the measure ultimately failed, it drew the support of more than half of all Senate Democrats, a record number for such a resolution. All Senate Republicans voted against it. The change in tone has been driven by growing alarm over the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, with many Democrats pointing to images of widespread malnutrition and starvation among Palestinian civilians. Several senators who have historically been staunch supporters of Israel changed their votes. Independent Senator Angus King, who caucuses with the Democrats, said he voted to block the sale because he believes Israel is not letting the aid get in, and that he could no longer stand silent. Similarly, Senator Jeanne Shaheen, the top Democrat on the Foreign Relations Committee, said the vote was intended to send a message to Prime Minister Netanyahu's government that things need to change. Republicans, however, maintain their unwavering support. Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chair Jim Risch said the resolution would abandon America's closest ally, while Senator John Kennedy argued that the terrorist group Hamas, not Israel, is responsible for the aid crisis by stealing food supplies. Not all Democrats are on board with the shift. Senator John Fetterman remains a vocal supporter of Israel, stating that he blames Hamas and Iran for the devastation in Gaza. The Department of Homeland Security reports a massive surge in interest for positions with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. In just over 2 weeks, the agency has received more than 100,000 job applications. This comes as the Trump administration pushes to hire 10,000 new immigration enforcement agents nationwide. The recruitment drive, which began at the end of July, has been framed by officials as a direct response to the immigration policies of the previous administration. In a statement, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said, "Our country is calling you to serve at ICE. Your country needs dedicated men and women of ICE to get the worst of the worst criminals out of our country." To attract a wide range of candidates, the administration has removed certain limits on who can apply, such as age caps, and is offering significant incentives. These include signing bonuses of up to $50,000 and options for student loan repayment or forgiveness. The push to bolster ICE's ranks comes at a time when, according to DHS data, assaults on its agents have seen a dramatic increase. The agency is advertising for several key roles, including deportation officers, criminal investigators, and general attorneys. All new recruits will be required to pass medical and drug screenings, as well as a physical fitness test. The agency's own recruitment website addresses the potential dangers of the job, stating that while officers should expect a certain level of risk, they are expertly trained to ensure their well-being. This focus on bolstering federal agency ranks extends to the armed forces, where the Pentagon is reporting a significant increase in female recruits. Across all service branches, nearly 24,000 women have enlisted so far in fiscal year 2025. That's a substantial jump from the roughly 16,700 who had enlisted at this same point last year. A defense official attributed the trend to what they called a Trump bump and the strong leadership of Secretary Hegseth and President Trump. They claim a renewed focus on the warfighter and a move away from politically correct garbage is inspiring more women and men to serve. This surge follows a period of record-low recruitment in 2022, with a turnaround beginning in 2024. The Army, for instance, has already surpassed its fiscal 2025 recruiting goal 4 months ahead of schedule. This comes despite recent surveys showing that a vast majority of young Americans are not considering military service, often citing concerns about physical injury and the emotional toll. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has been a central figure in this new direction, though not without scrutiny. Prior to his confirmation, he had questioned the effectiveness of women in direct ground combat roles. During his confirmation, he clarified his position, stating that women should be allowed to serve in combat but must meet the same rigorous fitness standards as men. His leadership team insists they do not discriminate. The main statement pointing to the removal of both men and women from top roles as part of a broader restructuring. While the current administration highlights its recruitment successes, a look back at the previous administration has been prompted by newly unearthed emails. The documents, obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request, reveal that in July of 2023, the White House canceled a planned visit for then-President Joe Biden to a ship at a Philadelphia shipyard. According to an email from a Maritime Administration official, the visit was scrapped after the White House realized how many steps were involved to get on the ship. The watchdog group that obtained the emails, Protect the Public's Trust, suggests this is evidence that the president's staff was actively managing his public appearances based on his physical capabilities, even while publicly dismissing any concerns about his fitness. The decision to skip the ship tour came just over a month after then. President Biden stumbled and fell on stage during a graduation ceremony at the Air Force Academy, an incident that intensified public debate about his health and age. The director of the watchdog group called the incident an example of amateurish planning and claimed staff were proscribing events he couldn't physically handle. However, a former aide to the Biden administration pushed back, calling the story a deceptive narrative based on a single email without full context. Another former official added that planning for presidential events is complex, considering factors like accessibility, security, and visuals, and that the email's reference to steps could have meant the overall number of movements in a large shipyard, not just a staircase. Finally, on the economic front, a new analysis from Goldman Sachs suggests that American consumers could soon be bearing a much larger share of the costs associated with tariffs. The investment bank's economists project that the portion of tariff costs passed through to U.S. households could triple by the end of this year. According to their report, through June, consumers have absorbed about 22% of these costs, with American businesses shouldering the largest burden at around 64%. However, the analysis, led by economist Jan Hatzius, forecasts a dramatic reversal of this pattern by December. By year end, they expect the consumer share of the cost to swell to 67%, while the burden on businesses is projected to fall to less than 10%. The remainder, about 25%, would be absorbed by foreign exporters. This significant shift in who pays for the tariffs is expected to have a noticeable impact on inflation. Goldman Sachs projects that this will push a key inflation gauge watched by the Federal Reserve, the Core Personal Consumption Expenditures, or PCE index, up to 3.2% by December. For context, the core PCE inflation rate was 2.8% in June, and the bank's model suggests it would be at 2.4% without these tariff effects, highlighting the potential for renewed inflationary pressure on American households as the year closes out.